All right, everybody, welcome back to the show. Walker, thank you so much for joining me on today's episode.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to have a conversation with you, Eric.
In your book, you said that we are here on this earth to open into who we really are. So I want to know from you, who are you? When you introduce yourself to someone, when you describe yourself, how would you describe yourself?
Um, Gosh, that's a great question. I am I'll do a little story. I come from Vikings.
Hmm.
I am a woman who is strong, capable, loving. I am a bonus mom. I am a wife. I am an artist through and through. I am a survivor and a thriver. I live in nature and long for nature and love nature. I live for it. I'm so connected to nature. I can get stuck looking at an ant for hours.
Hmm.
I can sit in silence for hours. That's who I am. I'm somebody who ponders and seeks the truth. And I'm forever looking towards the next thing that inspires and excites, but at the same time, I love where I'm at in this moment. I love that life is a constant discovery and exploration. And I think being open to that is really who I am. The excitement of that is who I am.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's beautiful hearing you say now that it's about being present in nature and being present in these situations, because hearing your early story, you talk about nature as being an escape from the present, from getting out of a really traumatic and kind of scary home situation as a young kid. What did that mean to you then? Like, what did it mean to, you called nature your first stage on an episode that I was listening to of another podcast. What did it mean to, be imaginative at an early age? What did that look like for you?
Acceptance and being on stage in nature, as you heard, and being in nature. What it meant to me was being accepted.
Hmm.
I never felt that I didn't fit in nature.
Hmm.
Never felt I didn't fit in. I always felt like that I was home and that everything in nature was receiving me.
Hmm.
Even if I was challenged by it, it was receiving me. And that was something I wasn't experiencing at my house. So when I went into nature, I think we all long, we have a deep, deep need to be accepted, to be understood, to just be present and feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, as a first sort of beginning, when we first come into this, we want to feel safe. We want to know we're loved. We want to know we're accepted.
Right.
And I felt that in nature. I always did. And I felt safe enough to be totally vulnerable and open and give my love.
Hmm.
That's what it meant to me.
Yeah. I'm curious, like seeking that acceptance and that love and adoration, that can be a really great thing. And it can also be a recipe for disaster for a young person going into a Hollywood system or going into the world in general, like for going into any career path. What were some of the dangers of that search in the beginning, and how did it kind of balance itself out? How did you protect yourself trying to find that acceptance and love?
First, I think a lot of people, as we learn about, especially more now, because people are more inclined to share.
Mm-hmm.
But the Hollywood system prior to the 90s, everybody kept it very quiet. If there was a problem, if somebody didn't fit into and you became a big star, then your life on the outside and what people knew about you was cultivated.
Mm-hmm.
So fortunately, I mean, I did come in on the tail end of that, even though there wasn't the studio system in the same way. The remnants of that, I think, was still definitely the 90s Hollywood. And women were treated a specific way, and it was pretty gnarly. A lot of things were rough. One of the things that I noticed going into Hollywood, especially in my acting classes, is that I realized I was not alone. There were a lot of fellow performers that had been through trauma and been through difficulty. And a lot of us were looking for family, looking for that connection. And we became very close very quickly. So I would say boundaries, not having that clear boundary that a loving home environment and acceptance in your home environment naturally gives you, is you have a clearly defined understanding, one, of your value, that you are worth being understood, that you are loved as you are, and you have a healthy boundary as a result of that. When you don't have that, at least for me, I went into the industry not realizing consciously that I was looking for a family. I was looking for somebody to praise me. When I discovered that and the reason I say this is, granted, I didn't go into the industry. I didn't grow up wanting to be an actor. I was one of those discovered stories. And it definitely happened just like that, walking down the street for me. And so it became really clear, especially because I started Meisner. I started very much in method, in that style of craft. And when method is very all-encompassing, losing yourself into the character in many ways. I always think of Richard. I think it was Richard Dreyfuss that said, "Just try pretending." I think it was Richard Dreyfuss that said that. And it's like, when I started, I wanted to get lost. I wanted to go into another character. It was like how I would disappear in nature from my childhood, my home, where I was, not my childhood, my home life. I would run into nature, and it was an escape for me to go and be something that I wasn't there, which was free, accepted, expansion, not contracted and afraid. I was totally unafraid. And so when I was playing in a character, it was the same kind of feeling, but consciously I wasn't paralleling how dangerous that could be.
Yeah. Right.
Because it just is. It's just a dangerous situation when you're dealing with people and that don't recognize what you're going through.
Yeah. Right.
So yeah, that was, I think, the most difficult, was the awakening that I had, the recognition that, oh my, I'm not coming out of this character as quickly as I should. And you hear stories about this with actors all the time, and it's historical throughout the industry. People get married, on set, or, they meet each other, they get married. That doesn't work out, a couple of years later, their characters married each other, because it's very much, acting, the craft is a vulnerable to be good at it. It's a very immersive, vulnerable, beautiful craft. But as Uta Hagen says, if you study it correctly, and you will come out of it one of the most well-adjusted people that you ever thought you could be. But you have to know and be willing to be as honest with yourself as you are meant to be with the character.
Yeah.
And walk those two together and recognize that. Well, in my 20s, that was like, Einstein level consciousness. I was not there. So I was extremely vulnerable to that, the side of the industry that is damaging, not just for women, but for men, for anyone that's been through trauma. They could, if you're not, because of the level of vulnerability it requires, if you are not doing your own inner work to recognize when somebody's crossing a boundary that they ought to have, you can end up in trouble. And every movie set is not a family. Even though we say that, it's not a family.
Yeah.
But we do stay together for, 2-3 months sometimes. And we do get close because we're raw and open while we're there. But it's not your family. And that can really cause a lot of inner turmoil when it starts to disappear and people go about their lives. And I recognized in my mid-20s in my late 20s, if I don't if I don't heal myself, this could take me out.
Hmm.
This could take me out. I could
Yeah.
either become an addict, because that runs in my family, and I had urges to start using again, because of the shock of it, not knowing what is happening and why am I feeling this way
Hmm.
about this experience. So the danger is not recognizing that you need to do your personal inner work
Hmm.
in order to create the success that you want to create on the outside. And as an actor, it's an honorable, wonderful job to tell the stories of others and to bring stories to the public in a way that is vulnerable, true, and authentic. But don't for a second mistake that it's something that doesn't have a price. If you
Yeah.
have issues and you have trauma, deal with that. Deal with that while you're walking that path. Don't ignore you
Hmm.
while you're trying to be other people.
Yeah. Yeah. What was it that triggered the sense that, like, okay, I need to address this? Was it a rock bottom moment? Was it reading a certain book? Like, what was the thing where you went, oh, like, this isn't healthy. Let me try to actually unpack this and see, what kind of inner work I can start doing on myself.
So there were two things that happened. One was I heard Richard Attenborough sort of taking American actors over the coals. He said, American actors need to live more life before they start taking on, a lot of them, he felt, need to live life because acting is about life.
Hmm.
And I'm seeing too much superficial, on the surface. And he was correct in a lot of ways. A lot of the stuff and product we were putting out, I wonder what he has to say now, because there's some really crazy stuff that's on that level
Yeah.
now. Exactly. It's like, but when he said that to me, or it was to me, I heard it to me. It was just a random, it was playing and it just like right into me. I thought, am I living my life or am I running from something?
Hmm.
That's how I heard it. And I was running from my past for sure. And I thought, gosh, I'm all work, all about work constantly. I go from one job to the next job, the next job, the next job. I don't have a life. I kind of fitted in around. So that hit me. And then I was in South Africa on a job, shooting a film. And and I wrote a little bit about it in the book. The director and one of the lead actors made a deal behind my back to get that he wanted to get a raw, unexpected moment. And this was a scene where my character was getting attacked by three men. And if you know the industry, which I know you do, when it comes to any scene where a woman is getting attacked or there's a fight scene or any kind of violent scene, it's discussed thoroughly with the director, the actors. Everybody's understood what's going to happen before we go into it, because there's a possibility that somebody could get hurt if it goes any other way. We need to it's choreographed, and it's not just, physically, but and blocked and everything, but mentally, to put yourself in a position, especially when you are somebody who really goes there, which I did, and which I do. You're very vulnerable because you put yourself in that helpless position. And so what happened was this director made an agreement with one of the actors who was attacking, one of the three guys, and with the guys that were with him, to really hold me down and to do something that was not scripted, was to lick my face, which was disgusting and shocking to me. Not just that, but I was trying to move my arms, and the guys were holding my arms so hard that I was literally bruised on my arms. They were holding me, and I was trying to pull up, and I even went in between takes. Could you loosen my arm, loosen your grip a little bit? No response. It was like I didn't even say anything. It was like they were in their own space, and I literally experienced it as if I were being attacked. because there wasn't that in the back of my mind, knowing that I'm safe.
Yeah.
You got to know as an actor, you're safe to really let go. And I really let go because I thought I was. And then I realized I wasn't in the midst of it, and didn't at the same time not want to, to just completely lose control and freak out. He got what he wanted, because, I was terrified. But when the guy licked my face, I mean, could you imagine that happening now after COVID?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Then it was like so disgusting because I couldn't get up, and I'm feeling his saliva drying on the whole side of my face. It was that long that I was being held there, and just the way your skin starts to get tight, and the feeling I could feel is like all my pores were just like, and I was so sickened by it. That moment, something shifted in me, and I finished the film, and I'm a professional. I finished it. And the lead actor opposite me was really pissed. He was producing it. He was really pissed this happened. And he handled the situation a couple days later when he had a scene with the guy, which was really great, that he, felt that he wanted to make sure that it was brought to, it was brought out, and it was not okay. But, the guy that did it, his response was, "Oh, she's young. She's not a professional. She hasn't been doing it as long as I have. She doesn't know. She's an ingenue." That's what it was. She didn't say she's not a pro. She's an ingenue. She doesn't know what she's doing. She's like, I was just, he had no respect for women. He had none. Just had no respect for women. And, God rest his soul. He's no longer with us. But it was like, the world we lived in, there was a lot of that. It was just a lot of that.
Yeah. No, that was something I've heard that phrase come up a lot, in interviewing. I interviewed Diane Franklin a few months ago and reading through her book, and a lot of similar conversations, and she's the same, was very professional and also pre-Me Too era, this doesn't get talked about, but in her book, she talks about literally, here's structured in the script, here's this amount of nudity for this shot, and then the conversation in the car with the producer going, and do this, and this, and like, that's got to be a terrifying position as a young actor. I can't even imagine first being a female, which you talk about gender biases in your book as well. And then in the Hollywood system where you're going into auditions with 30, 40, 50 people who you're feeling competitive, there's a lot on the line. And so to say no, or to establish those boundaries, has to be a terrifying situation to be in. Like, it probably doesn't feel like there's a right answer.
You're exactly right. And and when I have so much compassion for every actress and actor that's been through this, because it's not just a problem with women, it's a problem with men too. But casting directors have been through this too. And it's, pressured by producers to bring in specific talent. I watched that happen. And the women not being supported to, and I'm just going to speak to women because that's all I can. I just know that it happens with men too, because I've spoken to men that it's happened to. But women have not had the foundation and the platform to support one another and create a livelihood. That's the thing that has been the most, I think, cruel about this, is women have been forced and almost hurted in many ways. If you're going to be in this world and make a living as a woman, you need to do it in this lane. And this is what you must put up with. And that's what I saw, not just actresses, but casting directors, female directors that I worked with. Every woman in the industry is, I can only speak to my, time in the 90s when I was really in the theatrical side of it. because I pulled myself out of that and went into commercial after that. And we'll talk about that if you choose to. But I watched that happen, and I just recognized, you know what, I am not going to be in this lane. I had my agents tell me, Walker, straight up, if you want to go to the next level, you're going to have to do nudity because of the way you look. Girls that look like you, there's a path. There's a path. And I was one of the few actresses in when I started that had Walker Brandt, SAG-AFTRA, does not do nudity at the very top of my resume, because I always had I feel like I've been a mom my whole life, but I didn't want to do anything that I couldn't show my little sisters. I didn't want to do anything I couldn't show my kids. Mm-hmm. It made me feel uncomfortable. It made me feel uncomfortable. And I thought, oh, I can't show my kids this. It's going to make them, I'm not doing it. And so I turned films down over and over. And my agents just got tired of it. They got pissed off at me. And so did casting directors. I had casting directors mad at me because I didn't want to do it. And at the time, it really pissed me off and it hurt my feelings because I was young, but I didn't recognize until much later, oh my gosh, these people were getting the same pressure. These women were getting the same pressure I was getting. They were getting it from the producers. Right. And they were trying to make a living, and they were trying to support their family. Like I was trying to support my family. So here we were, a bunch of women in our siloed, suffering situation, trying to make a living in this, environment where, frankly, it's just out of balance. Too many men and not enough women, and not enough women who had the courage, and me included, to say, I am going to be here for my fellow woman, because we got to balance the situation out. And there's a lot of great men involved in there in Hollywood too, but not everybody can be a Ron Howard. He's like, one of the most amazing directors and people. And I was privileged to meet his parents with a beautiful female director that I worked with. And, but that's like, unicorns in the middle of this an industry, and there needed to be balance. And there just wasn't anyone speaking like this then that there just wasn't the support system. So thank you, God, for it now being part of Hollywood and women feel more.
Yeah, at least that's a conversation. I mean, there's obviously still a lot of work to be done everywhere. I am curious, and we don't have to spend too much more time on this, but it's something that I'm fascinated by. My other podcast that I do, I talk with victims of sexual abuse by clergy. And so positions of power are always interesting to me, how those structures come to be, how they play out, how they fall apart. And I just want to get your perspective, because we look and say, the quote unquote casting couch goes back, in studios in the early days of Hollywood, like there were rooms it was very open. How do we get to a point where even in the 90s, which is you look at history, it's like a more progressive time, right? It's supposed to be like, how do these guys get into power? How do you get a Harvey Weinstein or these figures that you go, how did this go on for years? Is it just a matter of people being silent about it? How do they get into these positions in the first place?
Well, I'm going to cover a few different areas. Love your question about authority figures and how does that become a weak point? Yeah. Well, when your first authority figures abuse you and you lose trust and faith, which are your parents, a person, a child, will grow feeling afraid of authority figures or intimidated by, and enough to sacrifice their own well-being because they're terrified of them, because they've abused that. So that is, I think, what, the attraction, the familiarity. We are all drawn to familiarity. So we all tend to go to what's familiar, even if it's the worst thing for us. Right. If you just study abuse, you'll see that why is this girl or this woman this boy who went through this as a child with somebody that's doing this as an adult, because it's familiar. And what's interesting within the brain, up until the very moment, because you survived that, your brain thinks it's okay. And up until the moment that you are actually going to not survive it, that's when your brain goes, oh my gosh, I need to get out of here. And unfortunately, that, like for my grandmother, it's too late because you would get killed by your abuser. And that's the tragedy of it, is we are so wired to seek familiarity that sometimes we don't even know that it's the worst thing for us. And we need to be more willing to accept the unfamiliar. That's what saved my life, Eric. Going out into nature was unfamiliar, and I went towards it. Wasn't afraid of it.
Yeah.
So the casting couch, how does that happen? This may be hard for some people to hear, but I'm just going to say it. Harvey Weinstein's happened as a result of mothers not showing men how to love a woman and honor a woman and respect a woman. I really think, and granted, men behaving badly is a problem, but I think women, we have a huge part in this, because every child lives in our bodies, is nestled within us, is close to us. Every boy in this world comes through a woman. And if that boy is shown how much beauty and how much to love and honor this caregiver, this person who is stewarding their life, if that woman knows her value through and through, knows that she's enough, and knows how important it is. If she's not feeling enough, how important it is that she show that young man that she is and all her value. That man is going to grow up knowing her value. He's going to he's going to grow up balanced, because she's going to love on him and show him how amazing and wonderful he is. And he's going to see that reflection and know how amazing and wonderful she is. And I don't think abusive men come from women who aren't abusing themselves in some way with their own value of self. So I think Harvey Weinstein came from, perhaps, and that's just the first thing that came to my mind when I met Harvey in a casting once, and he was one of the worst people producers I've ever been around. He was so abusive, and I was only in the room with him for a few minutes, and I was like, my God. And just the way he treated the casting director and all of us actors, it was shocking. But when he went, this whole story came out, the first thing that came to my mind was, my God, who was his mother? Because everybody's like, God, what kind of a dad he had? And I was like, what about his mom? And I'm not condemning her. Bless her heart, But don't tell me that you raised this man to respect women, because no guy chooses to be that cruel to women. I've just never seen it. I'm a bonus mom to boys, and I've seen men behaving badly, boys behaving badly, and it's a result of usually them not respecting women. The first person they're going to respect is their mother.
Yeah.
So women have to require that love and honoring and that respect. I think we have to. And I just think we've been suppressed and oppressed and pushed down and disvalued. And some cultures make men more valuable than women. The sons are more valuable than daughters. And I think that creates a whole undercurrent of disvaluing. And that needs to stop, because there isn't a human being that's more valuable than another human being, period. And it certainly would never be based on your sex. It's just, it's craziness. We're human beings. We're a giant species, a family that needs to recognize our value.
Yeah.
And not because of what our sex is, not because of what our skin color is. We just are. Geez, man, everybody poops.
Yeah, right. No, I appreciate that answer. And that's something, someone I interviewed said something similar where, the Harvey Weinstein issue, and they were someone who had been in many films produced by him. And so she said when he was arrested, it was like seeing God in handcuffs, like to imagine someone with that much power getting taken down. But her answer was similar to yours in the sense of it's not just how do you warn young actresses to protect themselves. it's how do you raise better men so they don't become the next Harvey Weinstein. I think that's a really important, and that comes down to dad showing, like I have a daughter, but either way, whether I have a son or a daughter, like how they see me treat their mom, and the level of worth given to her, how she shows care for herself, like all those things come into play there. Obviously, the theatrical system was pretty toxic, through that period. Switching to the commercial world, and kind of pulling yourself out of that trajectory, was that purely motivated by a lot of the toxicity and the feeling of like, I don't want to do the things that are going to, like you said, take me to that next level, quote unquote. And was your experience better stepping into the commercial world?
Yeah, it was. And you know what? It definitely, it impacted it. I mean, I had crazy situations. I had, A-list producers telling me, be my girlfriend and I will give you your series. I made this girl, this girl, and this girl. The craziest conversations. I'm going in for a meeting naive because I don't have any family in this business. I'm the only one in my family that's ever been in this business. And I'm all about the art of it. I'm all about the craft. And I'm going in and I'm thinking, okay, this is great. My agents tell me, you meet this producer.
It's about the acting.
It's about the acting. It's about the job. They're doing a film. They want to discuss it with you. And I go in and it's a conversation about, it's basically a dating service. It's like, why am I having a conversation? Why is this producer telling me this? And what project are you talking about? Where's the film that my agents told me? It was literally this producer wanted and made this story up and got me in the, and of course I never experienced the casting couch in the sense, but certainly the proposition for it. I've even been on castings where I found out later the name actor was actually interviewing for his next wife.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? So it just got to the point where I was like, okay, this is a crazy environment. I'm going to go ride my horse. I went out and I was volunteering on a ranch and helping people with their horses. I'm really skilled with horses. And I was since a very young girl. And I went back into, and I knew I needed to go into nature again. And I went to the Santa Monica Mountains and I met a yoga instructor who had a horse. And I knew, okay, this is where I'm being carried right now because I'm just so worn out from this. And at the time I was also a mom of 4 bonus kids. And so being out in nature again and helping people connect with their horses gave me clarity. And I thought, you know what? It helped refine my clarity. I already had the sense I need to move away from this. I just need to step away. I'm not ready for this. I don't know how to walk into a situation like that with a producer like that and not walk away feeling really pissed, really hurt, really, betrayed. I felt all of those things, and all the time I was spending on working my craft. It was like, is there an opportunity for someone like me? Is this just what it is? So I just stepped away, and I spoke with an actor about a year and a half later who was in the commercial side of it, and he said, you should consider commercials. And I had done some commercials in Europe, and I had done maybe a couple here. I'd done a lot in Europe, and I was like, and it was fun, but it was a completely different environment in Europe. It's just a whole different world in Europe. It's just been around a lot longer than us. So they handle everything differently. And I said, okay. And then I went back into, so I gave it a shot, and I went and met with an agency. And I have to say, Eric, it was a completely different environment. It was completely different. It was so much more levity. There was a lot more joy in the rooms. Probably maybe because the pressure was different. The system in commercials isn't as embedded as it is in the film and TV industry. It's not the same kind of, it's just not the same kind of environment. I guess maybe that's why. And I think this is a ridiculous terminology, but within the industry, and you've probably heard it, they call the theatrical side legit, and they don't call commercial legit.
Yeah.
And that makes me giggle because it's like, first of all, you got to have craft to do commercials. You need to get something across in a very short period of time.
Right.
And if Matthew McConaughey and all these A-list actors are doing commercials, then how is it not legit? And, and they've always been doing commercials. So it's like this thing, because there used to be a period, and by the way, also in the 90s, my agents didn't want me to do commercials. They want me to do soaps. They want me to do commercials, because there was this thing about, if you're going to do films, if you're going to be a movie star, can't do commercials, you can't do soap operas. So I was getting all this weird advice. And then it just like completely changed.
Yeah.
Thank goodness, because people have to make a living. But yeah, I loved it. I just loved it because I could play and be free and be, work my craft and have fun. And everybody in the room was having fun. All the casting directors were having fun. The commercial directors, I think I met maybe a couple the whole time that were just odd and not friendly. But there was generally a lot less pressure within the backside of the industry, of the commercial industry, that you just didn't have that experience in the theatrical side. There was just so much pressure, so much writing on it. Agents were always freaking out about, oh my God, this is a huge film and this is huge. And this is a game changer. And if you get this series, and it's like, my agents, personal agents, never did that. Never in a million years would they think of doing something like that. They just, here, we got a commercial for you, go on there, have a good time. And that's what I did. And it just was much more supportive and much more aware that this is a human being going out on these auditions. And it's not about your mortgage or your career as an agent in the front of it. It's about your career. Obviously, you're making your living off this, but then the moment to bring that energy into it isn't the moment before the audition.
Right. Exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Do you have any, because obviously, like you said, so much has shifted. It's funny because everything just has cycles. So it's funny reading, you read a biography of an actor or interview an actor, who is working in the earlier periods. I mean, it was like going on TV was that thing. It's like, that's career suicide to go on TV. Now it's like movie stars transition between TV and movies. And there's almost more pedigree to being in a hit TV show now than a movie. And same with commercials. Like now it's not rare to see, A-list actors or musicians in commercials. So there's a lot of crossover now. And I'm curious, like, have you ever had any inkling of like dipping your toe back into the theatrical world or stepping back into that industry? Or is it something where you're like, I had my experience, it was the good, the bad, and I've moved on from that chapter? Or is it something you'd ever consider stepping back into?
I actually do consider, because I was just having this conversation the other day with somebody that asked me the same thing in my personal life. And I definitely long for diving into a character, and really there's nothing like the craft for when you love it, there's something very fulfilling. I guess that's a better way of putting it. It's a very fulfilling experience to be given a script and read the story, and then start to see this person, and then start to see the nuances of that person, and to create that experience within yourself, and really see how this person evolves inside of you. Because again, it is the way that we live our lives every day in many ways. The thing about acting is it's almost like you get to put yourself under the microscope through the eyes of this character and see how this person lives their life, and how to create this really cool, and sometimes, awful, depending on the character you're playing, but still it's really cool to be able to create that kind of detail.
Yeah.
That kind of detail is so much fun. So I do miss that. And every now and again, I'll submit myself, or my agents will, on something. But it's rare that I see something, because all the great stuff, really, there's not a lot of it. And if it's out there, they're taking it. The ones that are in it. And right. And I'm not in that side, but I definitely do. I mean, I haven't pursued it with an agent or anything, but yeah, in all transparency, I do miss that. And I miss playing with actors. I love the banter and the, when you're in a character, those hangouts with your co-stars where you just riff as your character and discover new things about your character.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's really fun. And so, yeah, that's something I do miss. So I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it does take me away from my family, though. My family's number one.
Yeah.
Family's number one. That's why I also love commercial.
Right.
And advertising.
Yeah.
As long as I've been away is a week,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know we're nearing the end of our time here. So I want to ask you just a couple quick questions, and then I'll move us into our rapid round. I'm just going to ask the questions that are on my list. I want to ask you, so I'll slip them in here right at the end. But first, I got to ask, you were engaged, at least fictionally, to Pierce Brosnan. Was he as nice as he appears to be? What was your experience with him?
One of the nicest human beings I've ever met. I mean, truly, and I grew up Remington Steele.
Yeah.
Watching Remington Steele with my mom, thinking, I remember my mom looked at me and goes, he should be 007. And it was like, he should.
She should have bet on that.
She should have bet on that because, it's funny because my mom's a Trekkie too. And then I ended up doing Star Trek.
Yeah.
So when I'm on set with Pierce, I told him that. I said, my mom and I, when I was a little girl, my mom said, he should be 007. He's just perfect. And here you are. And so we kind of had a little giggle about that. He was one of the most kind, thoughtful, generous people. Just everything that you think about that man is exactly what he is. He's just made me feel so comfortable. And you want to talk about being on a massive set.
Yeah, right.
It was massive. 12 cameras on that one scene. 12 cameras were running at that moment. And there were like 6 just on the car that we were in. And I remember him coming up to me and just saying, you're not going to get a whole lot of direction. Just do what you do. And just go for it. And it just made me feel, again, safe, supported, and accepted. He was like, he gets it. We're here.
And respected enough to trust you to do your thing.
Yeah, totally. Totally respect enough to trust me to do my thing. And that was just like, all right, let's do this. Let's have fun. The audition for that was very similar to the audition for City Slickers. It's the same thing. It's just went in the room. The director said, this is what just happened. What would you do?
Yeah. Interesting.
Improvised.
You mentioned Star Trek, and thanks to you, I forgot to mention this at the beginning, I have never seen an episode of Star Trek in my life. I watched an episode of Star Trek, your episode for this interview. So your mom was a big Trekkie. Were you, and was it intimidating? Even if you weren't, I have to imagine stepping into something that's that established and has a huge fan base. Was that intimidating? Like, was it like this thing of like, oh, this is huge, or was it something where you were like, it's another day on the job? Like, what was the mood going on to set for those?
For me, it was like, oh my God, this is so exciting. I can't believe this. They're actually making a Trek uniform. I was just like so excited. I was just a kid in a candy store. It wasn't intimidating at all because, again, everybody there was so gracious and so kind and supportive. And I had a great time. I was on the set for a week for that. And being at Paramount and I'm a huge Patrick Stewart fan forever. Voice, Patrick Stewart. I mean, go on. He's amazing. So I didn't get to work with him. He only was on set one day and I didn't have any scenes with him. So I didn't really get to spend much time with him, but it was an amazing experience. No intimidation. I've never experienced that. Fortunately, I've never had that experience because everybody I've worked with, from City Slickers, every, big established production that I've ever been on has been amazing. For the people have been so supportive and encouraging. Yeah. And I've been very, very blessed. I've been on some lesser productions that have not been that encouraging. Yeah. But, Bruno and Billy warned me that would happen on City Slickers on my first gig. They said, it's not always going to be like this.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I have to ask, so Primeval, is going to be released soon. I'm a big stop motion fan, so I love Ray Harryhausen. I'm fascinated by all that stuff. Um, are are you interested? Have you seen it since shooting it? Have you seen anything from it since shooting it?
I haven't. And it was such a crazy situation because I mean the company went bankrupt and it was like
Yeah.
all in the midst of that whole battle. I can't I'm very interested to see it. I have great like pictures from, behind the scenes pictures
Right.
of the alien and and there was so much going on, but that was one of those pictures where it was a real challenge. There were things going on that were, not cool
Hmm.
as far as payment and the production was having difficulty and there was actors were worried they weren't going to get paid and we're in this we're in another country and
Yeah.
we're in Romania and it's not too long after Ceausescu was taken out and so it's the culture's fragile but beautiful and and I'm just loving the culture that's coming out from being hidden under that
Yeah.
oppression. So it was really that experience was amazing. And the director was a lovely, lovely guy. And we had, we just had some issues with some of the production company with, there were several
You
things that
got the
were.
full moon experience, huh?
I got the full moon experience. You got it. The whole
It's
full moon experience.
I've it seems like that's almost everybody's experience. Like we didn't know if we were going to get paid or if it was even a real movie, but eventually we were wrapped. So maybe we shot something.
It was crazy because I had actors calling me because I literally said, I'm not going to shoot. I had to say, my agents told me, they said, you're
Yeah.
not going to work today. You're not going to work. You cannot go on set. And I was like,
That's my
really?
job. Yeah.
You never want to tell an actor you can't go play and perform today, but I
Yeah.
had to because my agent was like, we're not receiving the money and you're not working. And that's the contract and you can't go on set. So then I had to deal with all the other actors being pissed off at me because their agents
Yeah.
weren't calling them out. So
Yeah.
I had to walk that line. Then I met some of the actors, years later, and they were like, did you get all your money? I never got all my money. And I was like, I did. I paid every cent that I was contracted. And they were like, damn,
Should have listened.
I should have freaking walked out like you did. Your agents were good. And I was like, well, they were, I had a contract with my agents,
Yeah.
so the contract with the production company, but I got a contract with my agents too. And I got to fulfill both of those as an
Yeah.
actor.
Yeah.
Sometimes actors don't think about that.
Right. Absolutely. Well, I'm going to move us into our random round. These are 5 questions I ask everybody that comes on the show. And thanks for indulging my couple bonus extra questions there. The first thing I want to know is what of your projects do you think is the best representation of you as a creator?
I think that some of my best projects as a creator have been auditions for gigs I haven't gotten, because the ones that I've gotten are, I mean, as an actor, you're unless you're, Daniel Day-Lewis and they hire you and say, which I didn't, establish myself to that degree, say, this is a script, but do what you want.
Yeah. Right.
Just do what you want because you're amazing. As an actress, and during that period, I'm following doing my interpretation of the character, but I am required to follow. So as far as creator, I don't know, that doesn't feel like something that I can really say are the best representation of me. I mean, City Slickers is the most fun. And it was my first because it was all improvisation.
Mhm.
Same with Dante's improvisation. That was all just me. That was not scripted. And in many ways, all of the work that I do is kind of that way. I think I pulled myself out a little too early to be able to say this is the best representation. I hope that is a good enough answer, but that's how I feel.
Yeah, no, that's do you feel like writing has been an expression that's been like kind of scratched that itch, I guess, so to speak?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I have scripts and I've written my whole, adult life and young life, teen life. It was an escape for me and a way to clarify my feelings. So I love writing and I love the imagination. So, but yeah, my most creative, I don't know if anyone's ever actually seen. In fact, there was a movie it just reminds me of it as you say this. There was a movie that I really want to do, and the director really wanted me to do it, but the producer said she's too pretty. And that has all changed too. Thank goodness, because this character was a killer. She was a serial killer. And man, did I have fun with that character. And I loved diving into that darkness, because it was like we're binary beings and we work hard to be who we are, but we have dark and light in us. And when you get to really dive into something that you don't practice daily and really go in there, it is an interesting discovery on the human psyche. And just one thing that acting will do, if you dive into the craft, and I think Uta Hagen maybe said something along these lines as well, it makes you very resistant to judging people because you recognize the nuances of humanity and people. You don't want to judge somebody no matter what, because you don't know what's going on in there. And when you go into the craft on a character that's that dark, that hurt, that retributionary, it's real clean cut and deep dive. And that probably was my most fun and creative audition, because I really worked on it. And the director, it was one of those moments where the whole room there was nothing said for a while. It was like, holy crap. And I was like gone for a bit. When you really go into a character, sometimes you don't remember what you did because you're in that space. And I just remember how upset I was that they said I was too pretty. And then I remember when Charlize Theron did Theron. So, Charlize, I remember you took the time to let us all know how to say that. Charlize Theron did Monster, and I was like, fucking A, yes. Because you know what? She killed it, and she's absolutely beautiful. And crazy people can be pretty.
Yeah, very true. Very true. If you were given the green light to remake any film ever, what would you choose and why?
If I could make the green light to make any film, what would I choose and why? Wow. I think I would make a film to show that relationship between a mother and a son, and the evolution, the impact, and just the mother, and just specifically, I don't like that word just, because it's not a just situation. Mother and a son and family, but really focusing on that relationship and showing what it looks like if it could be done, take years, as that child grows up and the kind of man that child grows into, or in reverse, a man behaving badly and his beginning, maybe both sides, and the reason I would do it, because I think it would help humanity, help women respect themselves more and recognize their value and responsibility and purpose in many ways. Here we are so caught up in what's your purpose. It may not be glamorous to women to think, being a mother is your purpose, but it is part of your purpose as a feminine energy. You are creation, you carry it within you. And so it's extremely, in my opinion, glamorous, wonderful, and beautiful and amazing. It's just the perspective of it, because it's been minimized.
Right.
Perspective. So I think I would do that film, because it would be really cool to see that. I would love to see it, and I think it may help people.
Yeah. What is a movie that people would be surprised to know that you enjoy?
What is a movie that people would be surprised to know I enjoy? Yellowstone. It's not a movie, it's a series.
Everyone talks about it, but I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, I just think, because, it has a lot of violence and a lot of stuff, but maybe they wouldn't be because of the horses in the country, and that's very much part of my life. But the character, the daughter, she's just so freaking good at her character. She's so freaking just out on a limb. She's so fractured. She's amazing to watch. I want to give you a movie that people would be surprised that. Are you speaking of a movie that I like?
A movie you like that people would go, I didn't expect her to pick that. I know it's not Texas Chainsaw Massacre. We established before this. But is there any is there anything, or even if it's a movie that maybe most people would say, oh, it's not a very good movie, but you're like, I love this movie. This, you have some deep affinity for it.
I have a deep affinity for it. Golly, that's such a great question. I'm having a hard time. It's going to come to me as soon as this interview is over, which sucks, but which totally sucks. But no, I can't. I think I'm pretty easy to read when it comes to. First of all, I don't spend a lot of time watching TV and film. I have watched a lot. Maybe Kurosawa. Maybe people would never think that I'd be a Kurosawa, but I'm a Kurosawa groupie. I love it.
What's his best, do you think?
Oh, I think that, well, of course, the Seven Samurai. In my 20s and 30s, I watched a lot of Kurosawa. I was a total, and I never realized that the Magnificent Seven was taken from
the American version. Yeah,
the American version. I learned that when I was studying film, but yeah, Kurosawa with Ronin. All
right. That's 3 down, 2 to go. What is the best decade of film history? If you had to pick a decade, what would you pick?
I wish I could say it's right now. Because I love how things are in some of the smaller films, more independent stuff is evolving.
Yeah. That's a valid answer.
I do really love, Guardians of the Galaxy. I love the heart in that film. I love the mixing superhero with real deep human condition. I do love that. I love the entertainment of effects, but I have to say, I also love, My Left Foot. I love the piano. I love the deep, thoughtful moments we had in the 90s and 80s. So, but I want to say now, just because I want to see what we're going to do. Yeah,
absolutely. It's been a strong start. This has been a great year so far. So I'm curious to see what's on the horizon over the next 7 or 8 years now. The last question I ask everybody, what is the best piece of advice you would give to an aspiring filmmaker who is listening to this? I feel like you've left a couple gems throughout already, but if you had to give one piece of advice, what would you choose?
Be patient with yourself. There is no perfect. And trust not only your gut, but the gut of those you chose to work with you on this story, this creation, because it's that collaboration founded in trust that really allows for the magic to happen.
Love it. Great piece of advice. And thank you so much, Walker, for taking the time to do this interview. I really do appreciate it. And thanks for making me watch my first Star Trek episode. So there you go.
Yeah, I'm a Star Trek more than a Star Wars girl. I love the humanity in Star Trek.
Yeah, absolutely.